So my name is Stephanie Fryer. To those of you I haven't seen yet today, I work in L&D at US Rowing. I also oversee our summer camps, our U19 summer camps, so selection development camp and pathways development camp. So I'm sure I'll be emailing with a lot of you guys soon as we ramp up those decisions and applications. I'm super excited for our last session. Rachel Rane is joining us. This is her fourth session today, so she's been a champ joining us all day on a Sunday. But if you haven't been in any of her sessions before, she's amazing. She's a two-time NCAA varsity 8 and team champion with the University of Texas. She also had some international success on our U23 team, Coxswain Women's 8 to gold in 2022. She's now an assistant coach at Michigan, and we're excited to hear this last talk of hers today about creating an ultimate Cox squad. I will pass it over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It's good to, end on one of my favorite topics to talk about, something that totally transformed the team, I would say, at Texas. And yeah, we'll just kind of dive right in. This slide is much more like I picture focus because I owe a lot to the Coxswains that I worked with at school. I just want to stress, you're not always going to be best friends with the Coxswains that you work with, and that's okay. But these guys I have a ton of respect for, and I still, keep in touch when we can. Yeah, and I don't know. It was just a wonderful experience, and I owe a lot to these guys. So I just want to say that just for starters. But hopefully you have a dinner in front of you or something. It's late wherever y'all are, but let's get into it. So Stephanie introduced me pretty well. I want to say just one point underneath the assistant coach at Michigan, I know a lot of you guys love coxing and it's amazing and it's a big part of my life, but I want to stress that it's not the only part of your life. I have aspirations to go into filmmaking, whether that's, documentary stuff or actual Hollywood stuff. But if you're interested in learning more about that stuff, I'll plug my YouTube video. It's a 13-minute documentary about rowing, and I think it's pretty encapsulating of the experience at the D1 level. So yeah, all right, let's get into it. Okay, I just gotta move this down. I encourage you all to have your cameras on just so I can see your faces. If I make a funny joke, I know that it's funny or something like that. But yeah, turn on your cameras. It's the last one of the day for me, so it would mean a lot. Thank you. Okay, thanks guys. So a coxswain squad culture is crucial to the success of any team, whether you're in high school, college, on the national team. It is going to do so much for the athletes. And I think everyone here right now cares a lot about the team, right? That's why you guys are here. You're trying to get better. You're trying to learn different ways to approach the role and, learn different experiences and have stories and such. But you care about your rowers and your athletes. And if you can master this, then you will definitely add to the team culture. So I don't know if anyone has been in my other sessions, but I talked a lot about, especially in the recruiting process, talked a lot about how unique our role is, right? There's very limited seats everywhere, and we just have a lot of responsibility, whether we're in a boat, whether we're not in a boat. So at the NCAA level, there are only 3 boats that race at the NCAA championship. So only 3 spots. At the national team level, there's a women's 8 and there's a men's 8. There's only 2 seats available. In high school, it really depends how big or small your program is, but also depends on how, the coaches boat y'all. Seniority is a huge thing in the high school world. And so fostering a healthy and supportive but competitive culture is just the key for all of those types of situations. So the question is how do we create a squad that can work together, improve together, and push the team forward without kind of, getting in each other's ways, but also maintaining those important relationships. Okay. the team. I don't know. I'm an assistant coach at Michigan. We use the Michigan football team as an example in a lot of what we do. They're the winningest team in the country in terms of football games. And Bo Schembechler, one of the storied coaches there, he gives a great locker room speech before a Big Ten championship. You guys should check it out just for anything. And he talks about that no one is more important than the team, right? You're going to go on after you play this Big Ten championship football game and you're gonna start working for money. You're gonna start working for contracts. You're gonna it's not going to be about the team. It's gonna be about where you're getting paid, where you're getting playing time, all that stuff. So here it's about the team. There's not a single person, there's not a single coach, there's not any single factor that is more important than the team. And that's huge to understand as a coxswain. So what I mean by that is if you're not in a boat, you're still in a boat, right? There's other roles that you can play as a coxswain to support the team despite not being actually in the ninth seat, right? So we just have to recognize as a collective and understand that the goal of being on a team is the team, right? It's boat speed, not just your individual success. I feel like if you've joined a lot of the, meetings, talking with other really highly performative coxswains in this presentation, or in this conference today, I don't really think they would talk about themselves a lot. They would talk about themselves in certain experiences and things that they learned, but it's not about individual success. It's not about an accolade, a trophy for you. It's about the team. So the most important thing is you have to support your teammates. If your teammates succeed, the team succeeds, right? Everybody gets a ring. And that's one of the, I guess, most important things. I feel like if you watch a lot of basketball, everyone gets a ring. And the second you put yourself before the team is the second the team will fail. I guarantee it. You matter. Your role is super important, whether you think so or not. Whether you're, a freshman joining, your first collegiate team, or you're a senior on your high school team. The team is the most important thing. Because the coaches and the rowers will notice when there's tension between coxswains, but also just when you're clearly trying to get ahead and bring everyone else down, if that makes sense. I don't want to try and make this presentation negative, but I've had a lot of experience before getting to college where there was a bit of a negative coxswain culture, and it happens. It's everywhere. So I'm just here to teach you guys that you could be the one to change it. You could be the one to not have it at all. Because a cohesive coxswain squad leads to better communication, trust, and overall performance. And trust me when I say this, it's much more fun. So collaboration over competition is a huge first step. There's always a place and time to compete, right? There's 3 seats at NCAA's. There's 1 seat on the national team, depending if you're on women's side or men's side, still 1 seat. You have to be competitive, right? There's no doubt that that's not going to exist there, but there's a time and place to be competitive. When there are times to be collaborative, or when you're you have 2 boats side by side and you're running through a 20K workout, or you're just doing a technical focus. There's no need to get in the other coxswain's way. There's no need for that coxswain to get into your way. So you have to establish that collaboration before, because, if one person looks bad, you both look bad. That's just the reality of how it works. I can tell you more times I can count on my fingers where in college, the boats would come apart and it'd be coxswains get closer together. Never was it ever, Rachel, go this way. Rachel, you're too far. It would always be coxswains get close together. So you are within your own unit. So talk about a practice plan and what you want to execute before getting into the boat. Every single day. Pieces, steady state, even land workouts. Okay, who's running what? I'll lead the core workout. I'll run this warm up. All of those things so that it's cohesive. And that goes with just sharing insights, of like what you know. Like sometimes you'll meet somebody in your group who knows, something a little bit better than you, and you know something a little bit better than them. Like talk about, what do you think about these lineups? Hey, during this technical focus, like I heard you say this when I was in the launch. Like, what did you mean by that? And ask those questions, and don't be afraid to do that. It doesn't show any sign of like weakness or anything like that, where like, and for the person who's getting asked that question, it's not like you're better than them, right? And that's how you always have to think. Clear communication leads to smoother practices. So going off of just like practice plan and execution, and then talk after practice. I can't, a lot of times after practice, I would work with both these guys in the picture, Olivia Fogarty and Carly Leganzowski, a lot. And we would just be like, hey, like, we took this turn a little too like sharp. When I'm on the inside, we need to do this better. When I'm on the outside, like I'll let you, have to let me know when you start your turn, like those types of communications. And it's nothing that the other person did bad. It's just something we can both do better. And that, again, that's the way that you have to think about it. I think working together shows maturity and leadership. You're at the, collegiate level, even the high school level, like you can elevate the way that you run practices by just working better together. And when you elevate each other, you elevate the team. It all is like this continuous cycle. You got to have a lot of humility and accountability with working with your Coxswain squad. Again, it's going back to like, just because I'm confused about something doesn't mean I'm worse than said coxswain, vice versa, right? Nobody's perfect, Hannah Montana. So have the humility to ask questions and admit mistakes. Oh, I'm sorry, like I came way too close, like we accidentally clashed, like that was my bad, right? And admit that mistake so that there's no like question that it's gonna happen again. And it just creates a space where like all of that is welcome. Like you want to show up to practice, and when you're getting all of your stuff ready to go launch, like having people to talk to is so nice, because the rowers are warming up, they're filling up their water bottles, they're stretching, they're doing something that like you don't have a part in. So create something that you do, and hold each other to high standards without, tearing each other down. When I was a senior, and we had new freshmen come on, like I would watch in the launch a lot and I would take notes. I'd be like, hey, these are the things I noticed, like you do this really well, but let's just get this really well, because I want, when I graduate, this coxswain as a freshman to then become a sophomore, grow those skills, and then do it for the freshman when she's a senior or when she's a junior. Like it really doesn't matter. And BCE, no BCE behavior. We say this a lot at Michigan, but no blame, complain, and excuse behavior. Like admit to mistakes, take accountability, take ownership of what you do, because it builds trust within not just your coxswain squad, but with the team. And again, maturity, vulnerability, all of those things are really important, and people will take notice. Like when things aren't going well within the group, you're more likely to not honestly get voted, I would say, because there's no need for drama. No coaches, no rowers want any coxswain in your boat that is not going to take ownership for the things that they do, because every single day the rowers are judged and evaluated on everything that they do, and they're taking it and they're trying to do better. You have to do the same thing. Communication is key, just like collaboration. But we talked about what we can do before practice. So discussing, the practice plan and what we want to execute, and align on key calls and the strategies. What I mean by that is like when the focus on the board says we're going to work on a long leg drive, like, okay, that should be the only thing that's coming out of your mouth, really. Like there shouldn't really be anything you're not focusing on. So be on the same page so that, again, we're not stepping on each other's toes. We're not trying to like go off script. Does that make sense? And during practice, like, things don't always go your way. Sometimes you'll get too close, sometimes you get too far away. Sometimes a boat will have an inside turn and they're told not to take it early, but they take it early. Like stuff happens out of control. So it's up to you as an individual to maintain a really calm, clear, like demeanor, and communicate like, hey, after a stretch, being like, hey, like maybe off the mic while the rowers are talking to each other, let's take this turn a little bit better or something like that. Yeah, and just avoid stepping on each other's toes side by side. So if I'm holding the shore and the coxswain goes away from me and coach says coxswains get closer together, I'll be like, come towards me, right? That just makes the most sense. But if I'm on the shore, I'll be like, I'll come towards you. So you just have to take initiative during practice and communicate so that the rowers are focusing on the rowing, because when there's a lot of like uncertainty between the coxswains, whether they're like running practice efficiently or not, they start to like get less focused on like actual rowing. It's like when you're in a race and you don't want them to focus on any other boats, but like they kind of see the other boat like walking and they get really distracted by it. It's like those things. Like you have to, what's the word for it? Acknowledge it before they start getting distracted with, external things. And then after practice, again, like just debrief, circle back, provide constructive feedback for each other. It creates a really professional relationship where like when you get to the boathouse, when you get to practice, this is what it is. And when you leave, like you have a good enough relationship to like go get food, go have coxswain dinners, talk to each other, ask for like, hey, I need this for class, like can you drive me, or like whatever. Like those things are all important. Just supporting each other. A lot of these things are redundant, so we're just going to keep circling back, but like using each other as a resource. Like again, sharing insights on rower tendencies and boat dynamics. So this specific picture, Olivia Fogarty's on the right and Elizabeth Romero's on the left. These guys were in my class. So, and we were the only class of coxswains that stuck it out for the entire 4 years, right? Like a lot of times in college, maybe like one of your coxswains in the class like decides that it's not for them anymore and they'll leave, or, somebody joins or whatever. But these two, like, we've gone through it together. We were the only sophomores on the team. That was like the oldest class. After COVID, when we came back, we were the top age. Like there was no juniors, there were no seniors, it was just us. And we had to work together. We had no choice but to learn from each other when we would hop into different boats, because none of us had ever raced for Texas before, and none of us had ever gone to NCAAs before. So we had to rely on each other in like certain racing situations that maybe one person has been in high school, or, the things that we see at practice. It was all about like practicing together and refining our styles, and becoming leaders of the team. So being able to like share our leadership roles, whether, Olivia was running core one day and, I was running the bikes the other day, or Z would, be on the water in an 8 and we would both be in the launch, like watching, like nobody understands a coxswain's role better than another coxswain. So if you accept that and decide to work together, you create a really great support system. Yes. And this kind of goes into like the danger of individualism. Like everything sort of goes back to the team. When you have the support system, like sometimes I think it's easy, especially when selection comes around, is you get all in your head and you're like, okay, like I need to be in this boat, I need to be in that boat because it's going to go to NCAAs or whatever the case is. Like if you're always focused on being in the better boat, there's a lot of things that can happen, but you won't get along with your teammates. I remember my like best friend, she and I were in the same boat together for like a little bit, and she thought that I wanted to just get to the better boat. When the reality is, like, I was perfectly fine. I just was trying to learn from other coxswains, but like those things matter. Like if you're in a boat and you're with your teammates and you're just trying to get to the next boat, like some of those people in your boat would kill to be in this boat right now, right? And you're taking that experience away. You're not giving it your best because you're focused on being in another boat. So I think overall it just takes, like, it creates a negative atmosphere, and like it could damage the team morale. Like just be aware that you can affect things so much just sitting in the boat and like looking at another boat go by instead of, starting your warm up on time, or like asking them to, like, if they're adjusted, right? Like be present, be in your boat. Like the best coxswain squads are those that lift each other up, which means like, okay, yes, it's okay to be competitive, but like once you're in your boat for that practice that day, like just crush it in that boat. And then the next day, if you have an opportunity to compete for it, compete. But like, just put yourself in the rower's shoes. How would you feel if they wanted a different coxswain? Like if they were just looking for the other coxswain to like get an opportunity to be in the boat. Like that just, it's not a great feeling to have. So yeah, these guys, like we worked together for 4 years, and like it was just so fun to be with them. And I think I say that, maybe it's easy for me to say because I was in the varsity 8 all 3 years of my experience, and okay, like I'm at the top, like why would I be focused on being in the better boat? I am in the best boat, but I wasn't always in that boat. I think a lot of people maybe who know about me like don't know that I did not start out in the varsity 8. Let's see. Let's go back. Yeah, so after COVID, my freshman year was COVID, so it got cut short, no longer racing NCAAs. Like the seniors graduated, the juniors stopped rowing. They didn't think that there was an opportunity to race, and it was just the 3 sophomores and Carly. So it was just the 4 of us. And I was a sophomore. I was not on track to make a boat at all my freshman year, or at least the rate that it was going by March, 13th. And, the seasons in the spring started. I was in the second 4. And if anybody knows what the second 4 is and the collegiate level, it does not go to NCAAs. It might not even travel. Like sometimes it travels. It really just depends if the other team you're going to race has one. Fortunate for me, like we were a team that raced a lot of teams with a second 4. So the first race of the year against SMU, I was racing in the second 4. And I was upset about it, but I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be in the first 8. My goal was just to get to the 4. And yeah, I'll continue to talk about that later, but I think what got me eventually to the first 8 was focusing on the boat that I was in and supporting my teammates who were in the other boats and asking them questions. And because I was being a sponge, but also being present, like other rowers took notice and were like, oh, like, can I have Rachel in the boat for a practice? Can we see what she can do? And those opportunities sometimes, like, they don't happen because you have good race results. They don't happen because, they just happen because the rowers see you perform. Like, they notice things. So I'll probably get into that a little bit later, but basically, this is one of my favorite pictures that we have as a coxswain squad. The title is Keep Your Foot on the Gas. Like there's this idea that like once you're in this flywheel of this cycle of like, discussing the practice plan, talking about it afterwards, like talking about it before again, talking about it during practice, supporting each other, like, grabbing lights if a coxswain forgot it up at the top of the hill, like all of these things that support, like it's a flywheel effect and it continues to go. You just have to constantly just tap the gas to keep it going. Like it's not going to run on its own. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of focus to do it in a coxswain squad, but like establish this flywheel effect again by like discussing the goals and strategies, establishing a feedback loop too. I think that's like one of the most important things is just like not taking things personal, not just from the rowers and the coaches, but also like between the coxswains. Like they know things as well. I feel like sometimes there can be a coxswain. I'm just speaking on high school experience. Like I had a great coxswain squad relationship on the NCAA's Texas, and I had a great relationship on the senior team working with Nina. So this is basically like a high school experience, but I can see that it could be at a collegiate level. Like right now at Michigan, we're really working on establishing this flywheel loop. Like they're all friends and they all work together, but it's not consistent. And I'm forcing them to sort of use each other more as resources because all of them contribute something. But it's like one person has, like they all kind of complement each other. So supporting each other in their development and sharing recording notes and insights. I remember the night before San Diego Crew Classic. I don't know if anyone gets to race there, but I was rooming with Olivia, the one who's doing like a split here, and we were just talking about our race and like what to plan for, and like it was our first time racing Washington and Cal that year. Like we didn't get to race them the year before, and so we were like, okay, like top 5 team, here we go, what are we gonna say? And we put the phone up on like a light holder and like recorded ourselves in the bathroom mirror just going through every part of our race plan, just making sure that like to a T we were on the same page. Like the way that we were, yes, we had our own personal style and characteristics that would separate us two as a coxswain, but the whole plan was the team plan and the race plan was the same throughout the team. So just making sure that we got it like on lock. And this past where is it, whoops, oh god, sorry. This picture will show you that we did okay with the race plan. So yeah, like support each other and sacrifice your own like selfish needs to be in the best position possible and work for the team, because the results will take care of themselves. And if it's meant to be, like it will be. And I know that's such a hard thing to say sometimes because I've been cut from the national team 2 times in a row, and you just have to continue to trust that process and know that everything that you're doing is not necessarily wrong, but you can always come back and ask for feedback and ask questions to the people who are in those positions. Okay. Small but mighty. I think it's just important to recognize that like how big of an impact that you have on your respective teams. Like it definitely took a second to establish that at Texas. I don't think that was like the biggest priority, but my freshman year, like it was a clear like difference that we made. So I'll tell a little bit about like my experience going from the second 4 to the varsity 8 with these guys. And so I was in the second 4, we raced SMU at night, and then we raced them the next morning in the morning. So I was in the second 4, it went well. Like we called it the rust buster. So like the speeds weren't really relative because we weren't, fit enough to race down at like 36 strokes a minute quite yet. Um, but in terms of execution, yeah, like the team did a really good job. The next morning, like our coach just kind of shifted all of the lineups. So I got an opportunity to cox in the 4. And that was something that I never really had an opportunity to do yet. But I asked one of the coxswains who was in it, okay, what did you feel? Like what went well, what didn't go well, in order to set myself up. And she had, advice for me. Like she wasn't afraid, even though that she went from the 4 to the second 4, right? Like understanding that it's not about where you are, it's about the team. And I got into the 4 and did a good job per her advice. And then I continued to like establish myself in the 4, and I developed really great relationships with my stroke. We lived together. And there was another girl in my class who we weren't as close, a junior and then a senior. And the senior in the bow seat, she had no problem telling me what her her opinions were of my coxing, which was great at times. But there was just one day that changed just the way that I thought about coxing. And she sat me down and she's like, you have to be more personal. You have to make things more personal. Because you're such a fun person, you have a lot of energy, but if you hone in that energy to one of us in the boat, I guarantee you it's going to make a difference. And what she meant by that was just like finding things that made them tick or that they responded really well to, right? You're not going to ask everybody to drive their legs harder. Yes, in reality, that would be amazing. But you're going to call somebody out who is going to respond, which will probably be like your 6 seat or anybody really in the middle of the boat, where you're going to be like, okay, like let's take a seat with you. That's something super simple in terms of being personal. But you could take it a little bit further. Like she was from Italy and I learned Italian for her. So like there were calls in the race where I would just whip out Italian and the boat would just fly. And it's just those little things that you don't know how effective you can be, even though you just are talking in a microphone, right? And they're the ones doing the actual work. But it's like how to give them responsibility, but make it more personal. And I think like my stroke seat, she loves Kobe Bryant. And so I would always talk about like Mamba mentality with her and how she's just so tough and that like there's no way another boat is gonna walk. And the more I started to make things personal, the more this 4 just like stuck like glue together. And it was so fun. Like I solidified myself in the 4 and the boat did not split up. Anyone who tried to get in it would not make it faster. And that was it. That was the 4 that was going to be it for NCAAs. I was like, yes, I did it. Like, this is great. Like, this is fun. We broke 7 on like our 3rd race of the season, which is in like 4's terms, it's a pretty good start towards your gold medal standard time. But, a lot of people in the 8s started to take notice of how fun it just was to be in the 4. We were hitting all of our standards. We were even beating some, 2 V4s that were like split up into 4s, which is great. And people started to take notice, basically. I was still doing my thing in the 4. It was great. And then there was one day where, there was an opportunity. My coach calls me up at like 8:00 at night. He's like, you're going to be in the first 8 tomorrow to practice. Like, and it's going to be great. Okay, good night. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, am I ready for this? I don't know if do I want to be in the first 8? Like, I'm having a great time at the 4. Like, things are really cohesive. But sure enough, like, got into the first 8 and it went really well because, like, I was focused so much on my boat, which was great. But I think that's what led me to be super present with coxing the first 8. Like, it wasn't something that I was really necessarily nervous about. It was just like, okay, I know what I need to do. Like, I know these girls because I watch them on the erg, I talk to them. I don't necessarily watch them on the water, but like, I know that, this person likes to hear this because I've made those personal relationships with them. And that happened like 2 races before NCAAs. So yeah, I think just understanding how effective you can be and how you can make the boat like so much faster. And I think I just wanted to touch on as well, like I went to the first 8. That means somebody had to go from the first 8 to the 4. The second 8 wasn't being touched, like that was already pretty set. But that means somebody from the first 8 who has been in there all season, all year, had to go 2 boats down. And that was Olivia Fogarty, somebody who like I just really like to work with, and we roomed together. And you would think it would be really tough. Like I think I would not have handled it as well as she handled it, right? Like going from being in the first 8 to the 4, and it's not necessarily like, again, it's about the team, but like you have to have a competitive aspect of like, okay, you're in the 3rd priority boat now. You were in the 1st all season. So I think just recognizing that and knowing that like you might be in that situation where you're in my shoes or you're in Olivia's shoes, and how you handle that situation like can determine a lot of things, but mostly the outcome. And she could have been upset. She could have shown that on her face and brought it into the 4, but instead she just came up to me and she just asked, okay, what's up? What's the deal? What do I do? Like, what have you guys been working on? Like, I want this to be really good. And we just talked it out. There was no need to like apologize. Like there was just this unspoken level of an understanding that like it was just about the team. And that was what was best for the team in that moment. And I have a lot of respect for Olivia for doing that. And it could have destroyed the team, right? There was just a lot of things that were going on that you're going to find out in college, that like things will constantly be moving. Boats aren't always set from the get-go. Like, we had a girl in the second 8 who got appendicitis right before Big 12s, and somebody who like would have been an All-American in the first 8, she had to go stroke the second 8. And she was like, I'll do it, right? And it's just those like little things that like happened that could have just deterred the team. But Olivia was the one who really set the tone for that. And I think that is exactly why we won the national championship. Just the way that she handled it, the way that we responded to it, because the rowers trust a group of coxswains who are in it for the team, who are in it for each other, rather than just competing against the individual for like a boat accolade. So not only that is like the coaches value that too, like, and yeah, I don't know. I think she's one of the biggest reasons why we did so well. Yes, there was a lot of talent. We worked really hard to win that first national championship, but like nobody really knows exactly what happened, and that could have changed the whole course of like our whole year. So a lot of props to Olivia. So I'll end it on this last slide, and then I'll open it up to a bunch of questions. Hopefully just feel like you fire away. There's like 13 of you guys in here, so maybe it'll feel a little bit more personal, but the biggest idea is that it's just about the team. Like you have to support each other for the sake of the team. And you just gotta you gotta set your ego to the side when you walk into practice. It really it doesn't mean you can't go home and like call your mom and be like, oh my God, like this is going on at practice. But like you gotta be cool at practice. You gotta be cool when you're around a team. Those little things really matter. Like at Michigan, there's no question that they're obsessed with each other in the Coxswain group, but like they could do a better job teaching each other how to do things, right? Like asking questions when they switch lineups. And those are the things that like you guys can encourage, not only just as coxswains, but any coaches that are on here as well. Like I know a lot of times, sometimes coaches don't really focus on coxswains, and neither did really our coach at Texas, in terms of like collaboration, in terms of like those little things that we did outside. Certainly like the things that we said the way that we, ran practice efficiently, those were the things that were coached. But what we did on the side was us. And I think as a coach, I'm trying to like encourage those things. So say one of those coxswains or even the rowers take notice and they go coach at a different program, and they can do that, because like having a supportive coxswain community is like the best thing ever, because like nobody knows your role more than another coxswain. And if you constantly try and like hide things or bring somebody else down, like it's just not fun. So work together before, during, and after practice. I promise you, it's gonna make you better on the water and off the water. It's gonna show you just like what matters, and it's going to make the team so much better. So you just have the humility, set your ego aside to like learn and grow as a group. You're not always gonna like each other, but you will respect each other. And I think that's the best part about it, is like you have the line between like teammate and friend. I think that's also one of the hardest parts, like as a coxswain, is like not trying to play the popularity of like, oh, I don't want them to hate me, so I'm not going to tell them what they need to do to get better, right? Like, does that make sense? I feel like a lot of people, you could be a leader or you could be liked. It's the same thing within the coxswain squad. Like, if there's something that can get them better, tell them. Vice versa, take it, and then just celebrate each other's successes and hold each other accountable. Like, all of these slides definitely like were redundant and stuff like that, but it's just super important. And I like, if we could all like meet up and go to dinner and just talk about our experiences like in college, and be like, oh my God, remember when this happened? Remember, like, that's what you're gonna have at the end of your experience. Whether you take it beyond to the national team, you take it beyond to Division I rowing, all of those sorts of things. So encourage coaches on here, encourage that, communication, collaboration, working together, both on and off the water, because it will equivalent to boat speed. And coxswains who, might not have a coach who's, that focused on what y'all are doing, like, just take initiative, do it yourself, like lead by example. And so that, okay, you've created this flywheel, then when you graduate, the next person can continue out and on and on and on. So, yeah, that's it. We got about 15 minutes for questions. We can
Yeah, and we already have a couple in the chat if you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jody's asking, what are the most important specific things a coach can do to encourage this culture?
That's a good question. So for me at Michigan, like my main role isn't just the coxswains, but I do encourage, like, we do have weekly coxswain meetings. So whether you can, moderate those, or just have them meet and talk and just put them in a room for like 30 minutes while like a team is, on a run or something and they don't need to be involved, or, they should go run probably for the culture. But yeah, I think just forcing them to talk about it and be open about it. I think I've played a lot of recordings in front of them from each other, and they are now comfortable being like, okay, they did this really well. Like, what did you mean by this when you said this, Bella? Like, what did you mean? And then she would talk about it. And then whoever asked that question would be like, oh, okay. And maybe use it for theirs. Like it just like encourage collaboration. I would say when like have practice meetings before and after, and then eventually force them to like kind of do it on their own. Like, I think what was great is whenever we were doing something where we needed to like run it efficiently, we would always meet with the coach. And then we realized that it was just good for us to just meet always. And so we were just like, okay, let's just meet. Like, who's in what boat? What boat are you taking? Do you have lights? Do you have a speed coach? Like all of these little things that matter. So I think those are specific things that you can do, is just like put them in situations where they're forced to collaborate with each other. Um, and on the water, like if they need to move closer together, like less individualizing them, more using them as like, okay, coxswains, let's get the boats together, rather than saying, you know, Stacy, catch up. Like coxswains, let's get the boats together, because it's their whole responsibility. It's not just that one person who's down, it's the person who's up, and there maybe should add a pause or something. Hopefully that makes sense, Jody. But like when I'm giving coxswains add a pause, like it's all of them. So when the rowers are thinking about it, they're like, okay, coxswains, coxswains, coxswains. So then they start thinking like they're this collaborative group. So yeah, I think that, yeah, honestly, on the water, using just their names, like coxswains, do this. Obviously, it would be different if maybe you start a boat up like a length and you're like, okay, Rachel, go, Olivia, go. Like that's obviously different. But like whenever you're directing them, like whenever, one of them is maybe doing something wrong, it's calling all parties involved wrong, so that they understand that they will all look good when they're doing a good job, and they'll all look bad when they're not doing a good job. So
That's good. The questions are coming in, so we've got a lot. What is the coxswain culture like at the elite level?
yeah, that's a great question, Taylor. I mean, it's different, right? Like everyone, just like Bo Schembechler said, like nobody is more important than the team, no coach, no person, nothing is more important than the team. Like it will all go away sort of, at the NFL level when they're just doing their job to get paid. That's it. I would say it's a little bit like that, where it's not a super, like, in terms of the team, the national team, it's not quite a team until the boats have been set, right? Everybody's trying to vie for a spot. But I think this past year was my first experience working with the coxswains. Selection camps are totally different. Those ones are a different kind of beast to tackle, where you have to stand out. You don't want to make other coxswains look bad, because you'll look like something that rhymes with an asshole. But I think this last year when I was living in Princeton, it was just Nina and I, and I mean, a lot of the time we were just in small boats. So we were driving launches together. We were making sure that they were staying safe on the course, working together. Days that the coaches wouldn't be there, we would coach together, and we would be like, okay, what do you see them do? Like, it's sort of like what you make it at the national team. You can choose to be stone cold and just be like, okay, this is like, I'm not going to share any of my insights. But I think Nina and I were the type, like, we're very similar people. We look alike, but we're also very similar types of people when it comes to understanding how important that relationship is. So definitely different. I would say it doesn't always have to be, like, it doesn't affect the rowers as much when you're in eights, yes, like, and you're working side by side, yes, but like you don't need to, like, really, I guess when they're in small boats, you don't really need to like meet or anything. But like when we're in eights, we would always chat and be like, hey, like, I'm gonna take this lane, you're gonna take this lane, okay, cool. And then we just follow what the coaches were saying, and we would try and keep up together. The coaches don't really, like, at the national level, like they don't really care about that whole collaboration. They're just trying to get the rowers like rowing well, and it's our job to like put them in a position to do that. So it's more self-accountable from like me and from Nina to like work together, but it's really up to us if that like needs to exist, really.
That's great insight. Taylor had a second question. What are ways to help guide and teach underclassmen coxswains at the collegiate level as an upperclassman coxswain?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we just kind of went through, yeah, setting up meetings every season. I would have all the coxswains come to my apartment, and we'd go through like the expectations, not only just from our coaches, but like from our squad. And we would just set those expectations and they would just ask questions because like we don't like as upperclassmen, we want them to be like we don't want them to get yelled at if they know something that's like easily avoidable, right? Like I my freshman year and my sophomore year, like I didn't really have that much guidance. I could only, seek out it myself. I think it's really nice to have an upperclassman approach you, and that encourages more of that collaboration. So, um, yeah, I would say set up meetings, make it personal, like have them go to your apartment or house or something, have them over for dinner and go through like expectations of the team and go through your expectations of like how we're all going to run this thing together, what's important, what's not important, and then constantly like come back to that meeting within like those practices. I don't know if you necessarily need to like listen to their recordings or anything, but if they ask you, like for sure, like make yourself approachable for them if they needed or wanted you to listen to their recordings, like you would listen to them and give them feedback. Or like if you're in the launch and they're in the boat, you're taking notes and you're like, hey, I took some notes on things that I noticed in practice. Like, do you want me to share them with you? Like little things like that.
That's good. And then I feel like we have some that are kind of along the same line, and kind of dealing with difficult coxswains. This is the next one is as a coxswain, how do you deal with a coxswain who isn't as committed and sets the wrong example for some of the younger coxswains?
As a coxswain, how do you deal with a coxswain who isn't committed and ends up almost distracting and setting the wrong example for other coxswains? Ooh, that's tough. Um, well, I mean, I feel like it depends on where you are in the team. Um, there's a couple ways to go about it for sure. Um, if you're a senior and this person is the same age as you, I wouldn't have a problem, just being like, hey, I don't think what you're doing is like really great. Like I'm concerned for the younger coxswains. Like when you do this, they feel like this, like I know it's hard not to use the you, but maybe you can take that and be like, when this happens, they feel like this, and stuff like that. But if you're, mature enough to like recognize that this coxswain who's younger, or sorry, older than this younger coxswain, that's what they're doing. Like the first thing that came to my mind, like specifically, like when I was a freshman, I would just go to a rower who has like a lot of voice on the team, somebody who like would not tolerate anything that will get in the way of the team's success. And I'd be like, hey, I didn't want to like go up to them directly. I really trust you with this, but like this is happening in the coxswain group, and I would appreciate you maybe pulling them aside as a fellow senior or fellow junior and talking to them about it, because there are people who have no problem with confrontation. But I think sometimes it's really hard when you're like a sophomore and you're or a junior and you're saying that to somebody who's been on the team for a really long time. The last resort, if you really think it's like a serious wrong example, just go to a coach, go to an assistant coach, talk about it. Like I'm trying to think in my shoes right now as an assistant coach, like if somebody came up to me, like hopefully I would notice it myself and address it. But if somebody came up to me, I'd be like, okay, like what examples can you give me? And if they gave me like specific examples, I'd take a week or so to like observe what, maybe they said, and then I would do it myself. But yeah, I would say the first thing, like see if you can solve it yourself. Next thing, go to another athlete and who you trust, who has a really strong voice, and ask them, or then go to a coach.
Okay. And I think the next one is along the same lines, um, but maybe a little bit more specific. So, do you have any suggestions on how to approach a coxswain on the high school or middle school level that is being mean or attacking someone or letting their ego get to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. It's tough because you don't want to like be mean, right? Like I think I'm a movie buff, and when I see a lot of movies and sports about like athletes who are not understanding the core values of what the coach is trying to do, they're going to make an example out of them. That's the first thing that comes to mind is like figuring out a way to make an example. If they're really using those like vicious words like attacking and like ego and stuff like that, like those are harsh words. It's up there with bullying, and that's something that's not tolerated. So there's ways to make examples of them um, in front of the team to, let them know that it's just not tolerated. Like, don't attack somebody, but then certainly like on the side, as a coach standpoint. Um, as a coxswain standpoint, if it's in high school or middle school, don't handle that on your own. Just go immediately to a coach if there's somebody actually being mean. Like those things in college are reportable. So like taking it as seriously as that, where, you're getting a parent involved, or maybe like them as a person and like you don't understand why they're acting this way. You pull them aside and you're like, dude, like what are you doing? Like, this is not acceptable. This is not okay. Like, I'm not going to vote you. Like, I'm not going to allow you to be on this team if, you continue to do this. So those are the ways that I would approach it, just like from a coaching standpoint. I don't think any like high school or middle school or coxswain should ever like confront that without like an adult, for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of second that. I think, Michael, it seems like you're asking about it from the coach perspective. And so I would say from the coach perspective, I put my like counseling and sports psychology hat on. Just approach with kindness and start with the question why. Because usually if an athlete is acting out significantly, um, there's something else going on there, right? Like there might be another reason. It could be a million different things, but just kind of starting with kindness and asking why. But if they're causing harm to other athletes, like that's definitely something where you need to step in. Um, then we have one other one. Taylor asks, what helped you stand out for U23 selection camp from the other coxswains?
Great question. I think it was the same. I took sort of the same strategy as I took from like, being in the four and then, working my way to the varsity eight. Like I knew that was my first selection camp, but like growing up in a sports household, growing up like an extremely competitive environment between my siblings and playing sports for like over a decade before I started rowing, like I knew that selection camp for coxswains was going to be like somebody was going to try and be the loudest. Somebody was just going to try and like showcase their skills in a way that takes away from like the team practice or training. I think that's just like what happens like at, these selection camps where um like you're not catering to the people in your boat. You're just trying to say what you think they want to hear. So I think my approach to U23s was just coming back to myself and my foundation of like, okay, these are the things that I know. These are the things that I do really well. So I'm going to try and, showcase those skills with these certain workouts. So whenever I was in a boat, like I'd always be like, okay, whenever like you're in a boat and this is the workout, I would always tell them, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Okay, this is our plan. At 250 we're gonna take 15 strokes and we're gonna work on the catches and the finishes. At halfway I'm gonna tell you like what the speed average is and we're gonna drop it. Like every time we had a plan before, they were like they executed it much better. And I think just like tying those things that I did really well in college to then work with these athletes and try and bring them together as quickly as possible. That's what made me stand out. Like I didn't compare myself to the other coxswains, and I didn't get caught up in like what they were doing when I was in the launch or like side by side. Like I wasn't trying to be louder. I didn't try and like, steer in. Like I just played my game. and I didn't fall for like, the things that are really easy to fall for, like listening to what the coach says, applying that to the boat rather than, thinking I know everything. So the same way you would approach practice of like listening to the coach, translating it, I think that's what really made me stand out. Like just keeping it simple, but like not being afraid to showcase my personality.
I mean, that's great. And I think that's a fitting place to end it. We're right on the dot. Oh no, we've made it to 6:46. We're officially 1 minute over, and I don't want to. I know it's been a long day for everybody. I appreciate you guys all coming out, and thank you so much to Rachel. I know you've done a lot of hard work for us today with all of your sessions. I hope you guys have all found this really valuable. It's been a fun day for all of us. We're super excited to see how engaged you guys are and how many of you guys showed up today and engage with this conference. We hope to do more of these in the future. So please give us your feedback if you guys have any. And I think with that, we'll end the session. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been great seeing some familiar faces throughout the day. Feel free to like, on Instagram if you have any questions, like feel free to direct message me. Follow Michigan Rowing on Instagram because I'm running it and it's been fun. But also, yeah, like feel free to just ask any questions you have via my personal Instagram. So thanks, guys.